Good afternoon, everyone. How are y'all doing? Good, good. Well, great to be with you. Thank you so much to the foundation for inviting me to be here with you, and wanted to say thank you to the foundation, to Elise, to Jessica, to everybody who is working so hard to represent the interests of those of us who suffer or who live with neuroendocrine cancer. I want to say thank you also to the researchers and the doctors. My doctor, Dr. Halpern, is here from MD Anderson. Thank you, Dr. Halpern, for all of your work and for helping take care of me and so many other patients. And also, most of all, to the caregivers who may be here. I have notes, of course, but I want to speak because this is a different kind of speech than I usually give, not about an issue that I'm speaking on, but it is an issue, but a very personal thing for me. On July 2nd of 2022, I was in Bilbao, Spain. I was chairing a conference for the U.S.-Spain Council, and I was on my last night of the conference, and I was supposed to fly back at 7 a.m. the next morning, back home to join my family. And we were driving back. I was a passenger in a car with a few other people and a driver, and we were driving back on a dark highway to Bilbao. We had been about 30 or 40 minutes outside of Bilbao for the final dinner of the conference. And we were going about 70 miles an hour and hit a boar going 70 miles an hour. And the airbags came out and the front part of the car was all smashed in and the windshield was broken. And everybody was shocked because nobody had seen that thing. I didn't see the boar until it appeared almost as an apparition, literally. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like it before in my life, at least in my life, where it appeared right in front of me. So I don't blame the driver for not seeing it either, because it appeared right in front of us and we hit it. And when the car finally stopped and we figured out how everybody was and didn't look like anybody was seriously hurt, we got out of the car and the ambulance and the police came, and they asked at one point if I wanted to go to the hospital. So I tried to figure out very quickly, because you always hear about whether it's a bruise or something else, how maybe your body doesn't process it right away, and so something's going to show up later. And my hand had started to swell up and get red. And so I thought, well, I got this flight at 7 a.m. This is already at midnight or just past midnight. And I'm thinking, well, I got to get home, and I got to go pack and everything. But if I have to make an insurance claim or some other thing has happened to me, and it looks like maybe there's a broken bone in my hand, a small bone in my hand. So I said, yeah, I'll go. So I thought they would take an x-ray of my hand and they let me go in 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and I'd be on my way. But when I got to the hospital, they treated me like a full-blown trauma patient. They said, no, you've been in an accident, and we've seen a lot of people come through here on these roads that are in accidents who don't appear right away to have effects, who later figure out and learn that they do. So they put the thing on me, where you can't move your neck. And I'd never been hospitalized, had only been to a hospital once for maybe an hour, had never had an MRI with contrast. So they give me the MRI with contrast, and they put the dye in, and they take me over, and they lift you up into that gurney or whatever it is, and they take you into the MRI room. And they did the MRI, and the doctor was about to let me go. And she's speaking in Spanish and some English, because I understand Spanish better than I speak it. But between the two of us, we were making it work. And so she was going to let me go. They were going to take out the IV, which they do right before you leave, right? And as I was waiting for that to happen, she came back, and she said, my radiologist called down here, and he said that he believes that he sees 2 neuroendocrine tumors that have moved up from your small intestine into your liver. And when she said that, I couldn't even pronounce that word. I mean, I don't think I'd heard that word before in my life, right? I didn't know what it was. So I asked her again. I wanted her to say it again so I could try to figure out, right, what it was. But that's essentially when they told me that I had cancer. That's how I learned that I had cancer in Spain, far away from home, in a hospital that even today I could struggle to tell you exactly where it was. And I missed my flight the next morning, and so I didn't get home, I think, till July 4th. But it was a shock to me, a shock to my family. I'm Mexican-American growing up in San Antonio, and in the Hispanic community, Diabetes is a disease that ravages Hispanic community, other communities as well. So that's been the boogeyman for me. My grandmother was diabetic, my mom is diabetic. So that's what I was watching for, right? I think many of us have things that we know run in our family, and that's what you're watching for. That's what I expected to come for me, but not cancer. Although it turns out, I only knew one of my grandparents, my grandmother on my mom's side, that my grandfather on my mom's dad died of cancer. But since I never knew him, was not close to him, that wasn't really on the forefront of my mind. And so when I got home, for the next month, as you can imagine, many of you have lived, I had many doctor's appointments and tests that I had never had in my life, so many blood tests, PET scan, CAT scan, MRIs, so forth. It really puts your body through the ringer going through that initial period of figuring it out. And I have 3 kids. My wife, Anna, and I have 3 kids. We have, at the time, an 8-year-old daughter, a 6-year-old son. And the day that I got in that accident, my younger daughter had just turned 2 months. And so for me, the first thought was, are these kids going to get to have their dad around? How long are they going to get to have their father around in their lives? I think even more than me thinking, how long will I be with them, I was thinking of what is the effect on them if I do pass away. And for my wife, it was hard for me, but even harder for her. I think thinking about the same prospect of not having her husband around, raising 3 kids on her own. And we started going to different doctors. First, we went in San Antonio, and my wife went with me for that first set of appointments. And after a while, I think it was very tough for her to come with me. My mother-in-law, her mom had died of a disease called Wegener's disease about 2.5 weeks before our first child was born. And I had to go deliver the news to her that her mom had just passed away. And so that was still, for her, just hard to deal with. And so the first doctor, the oncologist in San Antonio, and we were both sitting there, and he said, he wasn't a specialist on neuroendocrine tumors, but I think had kind of done a little bit of research in anticipation of this meeting, and said, you probably have about 5 to 7 years to live. Well, my wife almost passed out. I almost passed out. Because that news of finality, or that prospect of finality, of mortality in those moments with your doctors can be very difficult. And so, the added element for me, and perhaps for others, is that I was going to have to make at some point a public announcement about this, right? One of the other downsides of politics, I was going to have to make an announcement about my diagnosis. And I was trying to figure out when I would do that. And first, before I did that, I wanted to tell, obviously tell my parents and my brother and everybody, but even some close friends. And figuring out who exactly you're going to tell before you make it public is not very tough. But I found after I had talked to maybe a dozen people that it became harder and harder to do it. Because in your mind, you're trying to move on and figure out what treatment you're going to get, and okay, well, what do we need to do? When's the next appointment, and how are we going to try to get better? And every time I would tell somebody, and there was a shock to them, I felt like I was going back to the beginning. And the emotional energy in a phone call to live through everybody's shock and grief for you, and they don't know how long you're going to live, it was very emotionally, after a while, I just didn't want to, I stopped telling as many people. And when I did make the announcement, ultimately, I felt like there were some people who felt like I should have told them. I think they felt a little miffed that I didn't tell them ahead of time. Which, was interesting. But I'll tell you, the story really quick, and then a few other observations, and I think I want to be helpful. I've tried to share my story. This is the first time that I'm speaking about this publicly in a forum like this. I went to Dr. Halprin. We had surgery eventually. It turns out that I have stage 4 cancer. It's spread from my small intestine to my liver. It's on both sides of my liver. So I have small tumors that take up, I think, about 10% of my liver. And I've got one by my lung. Ultimately, I had surgery in late February, and this is there's doctors in here that know this obviously infinitely better than I do, but this is my understanding as a patient of what happened to me. They took out about a third of my colon. They took out 44 lymph nodes, which were cancerous. My appendix, my gallbladder. I feel like I'm missing one thing, but they took out a bunch of stuff. And I stayed at MD Anderson for 10 days. I was at MD Anderson for 10 days, and then after that, I had a C. diff infection for about 2 weeks. And as you all know that have gone through it, when you have that surgery, you're trying to figure out what is life going to be like now. Right? What is the new normal for you? So when you're having to go to the restroom 12 times a day, really because of the C. diff infection mostly, you're wondering, well, wait, is this am I really going to have to deal with this for the rest of my life? Or what's the situation going to be? You're struggling to figure that out. So the first month was kind of tough, but after that, things got progressively better. And I take a shot of lanreotide every month at the UT Health Science Center in San Antonio at the Mays Cancer Center. And I take it once a month, and so far the remaining tumors are stable. But as y'all know, I was 48 when I got diagnosed. I just turned 49 on September 16th. I feel like, well, that's great, but I got to bridge 40 more years, right? I got a lot of years that I got to bridge, and I still have these remaining tumors. But some of the observations I mentioned, and because I am in policy, well, first of all, cancer is a illness that it affects everybody. Cancer doesn't know what your politics are. You can be the most liberal person or the most conservative person or independent, Republican, Democrat. I have met along the way now people from all of the spectrum in politics. But I think that hopefully what we can resolve together is that everybody should be able to get the care they need. Everybody who is facing this should be able to get the care they need. And it was a real eye-opener for me when I looked at the bills, and I have pretty good health care coverage. I had Blue Cross Blue Shield, but I had to become, an insurance sleuth in a way that I'd never done before. So I had to learn, the deductible and the copay and the in-network and out-of-network, and then y'all know that the specialty drugs are listed separately as specialty drugs, right? And actually at work, because in Congress they have a benefits office, and one of the people, not meaning any harm or anything, but at first had recommended a plan, and then I go look and it doesn't cover specialty drugs. So I was glad that I caught it because I switched from Blue Cross Blue Shield to United. So I look at the bills, and the bill for lanreotide, the list price for it is $24,000 per shot. That shot that I take. The price the amount that at least Blue Cross Blue Shield was actually paying to the provider was $6,500 every time I took that shot. And I end up paying $60 a month under my insurance. But y'all know somebody that's underinsured or uninsured, they're not getting the treatment they need. And there's so many of our best cancer facilities that don't accept insurance off the exchange, for example. In Texas, you have a lot of people in Texas who don't have access to our best facilities and to the latest care. Even geographically in Texas, and not just Texas, other places around the country, access and treatment vary. And so I want to say thank you to this foundation for doing everything that you can to support folks with neuroendocrine cancer and neuroendocrine tumors. And I have resolved that in Congress, I will do everything that I can to make sure that neuroendocrine cancer is on the minds of policymakers. For example, President Biden has talked about, is working on a cancer moonshot initiative, making sure that neuroendocrine cancer is part of that plan. I was in the Texas legislature when we passed the major funding for the Texas's cancer initiative years ago now, more than 15 years ago now. And so everything related to prevention, to treatment, access to treatment, survivorship I want to be helpful on. And I know that it's a long journey, that everybody lives out their own unique journey, that most of this would not be possible except for the caregivers in our lives who are understanding and patient and help take care of us as well. This 15 months or so, as you can imagine, has been very stressful for my wife, who back and forth, when I'm going back and forth to Washington, is raising our 3 kids in San Antonio alone while I'm gone, and then also now has a husband that has cancer and has to go to Houston sometimes for treatment, has regular appointments and so forth. So thank you to the caregivers. And please, I want to say, I know I've probably gone over my time a little bit, but wanted to say thank you so much to the foundation. Thank you all for being here today. Please also, I know that you are, but please continue to raise your voice to legislators, both state and federal legislators, and let them know that this is an important issue for you. All right? May God bless you all. Thank you all.